So, so my topic for JMeter is the JMeter elements and different assertions and the script that will cover in the while explaining the elements and assertions. So mostly JMeter is basically a performance widely used performance testing tool which has multiple components, and based on the user requirement or the client requirement, those elements will be used in the projects, active projects. So the major components of JMeter are the test plan, the thread group, the configuration element, preprocessor, timer, samplers, post processor, assertions, and listeners. And this is the execution order. In this order, the JMeter project or the complete testing will complete. So it will start from a test plan. Inside the test plan, we'll be having the thread groups, and inside the thread group, we'll define the configuration element, then the preprocessor and timers if anything is required. Samplers is nothing but the request what we are giving. Then the post processors to check what and all the validations we need to give. Assertions are also used for validating the response data, and listeners, which will define the uh, result of the request what we have given in the JMeter, what we have passed as a sampler, what is the result we can see in different listeners, that is nothing but the reports. So what is exactly a test plan? Test plan is the pen where we actually define the test case, what exactly we need to perform based on the requirement. And inside the test plan we have the thread group. Thread group is nothing but the starting point inside which all our rest of the test elements will be defined, and the execution of the thread group will be controlled by increasing or decreasing the thread count, the ramp up period, and the number of test iterations, means how many times we need to execute this set of request. Then the configuration elements. So when we define a request, that request will be in the form of either it is a HTTP request or JDBC request, or it can be a JSON XML request. So it completely depends on the project you are working and the and what is there in your test plan document. Based on that and based on the organization policy, will be using that. Then the preprocessor. Preprocessor which will execute just before the actual execution of the request. It can be a user parameter, it can be HTML parser. So a regular expression. This also based on you what will be told by your lead or what will be there in your test plan document. Accordingly, we need to follow. Timer. In JMeter, mostly the thread groups will be executed one by another. So sometimes what will happen when the thread count or the user count is more, we'll not get the exact time or the gap between the execution of two requests. So if something we need to validate, we cannot catch hold. For example, if any all actions, if any automation tool we are using and we need to validate the success message, and if there is no pause between the execution of one request and another request, then there may be chances of missing out catching that success message or taking the screenshot of the success message. Because of that, we need to give some weight between the execution of two requests or multiple requests. For that reason, we need to use the timer. Then samplers are nothing but what exactly the request we need to provide to the JMeter to perform the action. With these samplers, we can handle the get request, post request, delete on different HTTP services or API requests. Then post processor, which this part will execute after the completion of the sampler, execution of the sampler. That is what I just told. If we are creating something and after clicking the submit button, we must be getting some modal or getting some success message. So to catch that success message, we need to give this post processor action so that we can catch hold it and we can validate with our expected result. Assertions are most commonly used for the validation purpose in testing. Similarly, in JMeter also we can have different types of assertions, like response assertions, where we can validate the response code, response data, the size assertions, the duration assertions means how much time this request is taking, and expert assertions. So these are different kinds of assertions we can use in the JMeter, while executing the script. Then listeners are nothing but the represent pictorial view of the results. So now I'll share the screen of JMeter where I'll create some request and I'll explain all these pointers. Are you people able to see the JMeter screen or not?
No, no, no. It's a presentation open.
Okay. Mm, where it is going? Okay. Hope now you will be able to see.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so as soon as we open the JMeter, we first thing we need to create a test plan, or else sometimes the once we open the default test plan will be created. In all the actions of the JMeter or the performance testing, what has to be under test will be done in the test plan only. So inside test plan, we can create a thread group. Inside thread, we have the thread group. We can create the thread group here. In the thread group we have different combinations like continue, start, next. All these are different options to proceed with the execution process. Based on the options we are selecting, the execution will continue. The number of threads and the thread group is controlled, totally controlled in three different settings. First is the number of users, then the ramp up period and the loop count. Number of periods means at a time how many users will be hitting the request. Then ramp up period, the duration between with till how much time the JMeter execution will continue. Then the loop count is nothing but how many times this request will continue. For example, if it is 1 1, then one user one iteration. If 1 and 10, then one user 10 iteration, means same request with one user will be executed 10 times. If it is two user, if the user count is 2, then it will be executed 20 times. Okay, now I'll create it. So once the JMeter, once we create a thread group, inside that first we need to define a sampler. I'll go with a simple sampler HTTP request. So here we will define, in this HTTP request we'll define what is the, if we are not giving the protocol, then by default it will take HTTP. Then where we need to, what is the port number of the API request, if you are going for the any API request or web service, what is the port number and which path we are executing, and if it is a type of get request or post request, based on the requirement we can uh, give it. I'll give an example of a sample post get request. So where I'll pass the HTTP method or HTTPS method. Then we have some demo applications. I'll go with this. Then what is the path of the request? Which path I need to? In that application, we have one. Okay, we have different categories like fish, dog, reptiles. So let me go with this path. As because I have already given the IP address, so I'll start from the actions. The IP address I'll remove. Okay. So this is the get request to get in the pet store what and all the categories of the fish type. So if I'll run this request, it will execute, but will not get to know whether it is what exactly happens. So in order to know whether it is been executed or not, we need to give one listener. Listener is nothing but where we can see the result. So inside the thread group, I'll add one of the listener. Let me first go with the view result tree, and I'll add one another listener. That is the in tabular form. One is just some not in detail, and the tabular form will have the latency size everything. So I'll run this request now. Okay, all this got failed. All this got failed. I'll tell you what is the reason. HTTP here I have already passed the HTTP, so I should not give the HTTP again. Now I'll run it. First let me clear the result. All the executed result got cleared. Again why it is throwing error? What happened? Host. It was executing. Why it is not executing now? Anything I did wrong? HTTPS actions. Which is the wrong here? Hmm. Why it is not working? I have given everything correctly online. No? Thread group user status coming 0 y since catalog. What is the issue? HTTPS. Hmm. Just before illegal character found. Where? Last. Sorry, one simple mistake I did. Okay, so one slash was there which was causing the issue. Okay, so this is the protocol and this is the IP address of this uh, request, and what is the path is this is the path of this request. So I'll execute this request for one user and the request will be executed and it will show us the result. And it green it means it has been executed successfully. It was coming red, it means there is a failure in the execution. So here we get the uh, for one user the sampler got executed and this is the status of this execution. This sample time, this is the duration by which the execution happened, means what is the response time of this API request or the some HTTP request. After that, if I increase the count to 3 and one iteration, I'll clear the result first. And if I'll execute it, it will display three times, means three different users accessing the same request and we are getting the response accordingly. Now In the same only, I'll define how to use the how we can use the config elements. For example, uh, if this is the if we need to execute the same request for three different times, we can pass this path into one of the config element, and we can use that config element as a variable in the request. So for that, let me add one config element. In JMeter, we'll be having multiple config elements. I'll go with the sample one, that is the user defined variable. So what will happen in that user defined variable, we'll just define the variable name. Here we have the option to add the variable name. So it is basically a key value pair. Let me add the variable name as the host name or the path, and here I'll pass the value. What is the value of this? Why we will be using this? If same kind of request we are doing for multiple yeah, multiple executions or multiple requests, and if there is any change in the URL or the path, instead of changing the complete path in all the request, if we change the same in one place in the variable, then it will get impact all the 100 requests where it is been used. Now we are using for a demo purpose, it is one, but in real time scenario or in real time project, it can be 10 to 20 requests, where in the all the requests the same path might be used or the same API endpoint might be used. So instead of changing in all 10 endpoints, if we'll change at one user defined variable or any kind of variable if we're using in the project, if we'll change at one place and give that value in the request, so it will be changed in all the cases. So now I'll remove this with the variable, and the way of defining the variable is dollar, then the curly braces. Inside that, I'll pass the path. Path is nothing but the variable what I have defined here. Now I'll save this and I'll execute this. Before execution, let me clear it. Now I'll execute it. We'll be getting the similar kind of result. Okay. So in the thread count, we have three users. So it has been executed three times. We can see the execution three times. So in this way, we can define different kind of users, different kind of elements. Here I defined the I defined the variable in user defined variables. There might be there might be CSV data, there might be Excel files, or any counters, or any simple config elements. Wow, like how we are using in Selenium projects or any Python projects. In the folder structure, we'll be keeping one properties file where we are defining the a variable. Similar way, in JMeter, we can use the config elements to store the data, and those data can be used in our execution. From there, we can call, and the way of defining is with dollar, and in the curly braces, we'll pass the variable name. So this is about the config elements. The next part is the how to define the preprocessors. For example, if the same pet store for this, I'll disable this user defined variable now. I'll pass. Let it be there. For example, if I need to give four different requests for dog, reptiles, cats, and birds, so four times I need to hit this different. If I'll see, we'll be having for birds the URL is different. For dog, the URL will be different. So instead of keeping four different requests, if we use the preprocessor, and inside the preprocessor, if we define it, it will be one time use on it. It will be created one time and can be used multiple times. So similarly, how we defined a user defined config element in JMeter, will be having something called user something called just a second, preprocessor, that is a user parameter preprocessor. So the same request I'll keep now for multiple users. This is the path from action. We will take the path. Okay. Similarly, I'll keep multiple copies of the same request. Duplicate, where I'll just change one is for bird, one is for dogs, the third request is for cats. Okay, now I have created three different requests for three different categories, and I want one user, it will be three requests, so three user, one iterations. So we'll see it will be executed three times. Before that, I'll clear the result. Now all three requests will be executed three times. It's not cleared. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. Why it has been three times it has been executed for something else independent or what? It should execute one time only. Why it has been executed three times? I didn't say. Still it is executing 9. Some count is there. Okay, sorry. So three, it was no, why it has been three times for three users. It is considering three times. That's why. So in now three request is been executed for three times. So now the user will be one, and one user is hitting three different requests. So it is been executed three times. Instead of keeping three different requests, we can use a preprocessor where we can define all the three categories in the preprocessor, and with one request we can execute it. So what I will do now, yeah, inside this thread group I have created one preprocessor, which is the user parameter preprocessor. Similar way how we define the variable, in the same way we'll define the variable and the user. So now I'll define the variable as pets. These are nothing but the variable is pets. First item is for birds. I'll copy this and I'll add this. First user is the birds. The second user I'll add one more user. Three users I need to keep. Three users I'll keep. The second user is for dogs. And the third user is for cats. Okay, so I have defined the variable pets, and inside that three different users I will pass. So what I will do, I'll disable these two requests, and with one request I'll try to execute for three different users. So I'll disable this. It means it will not execute, it will not consider in the execution. So now I'll change in this one single request. I'll use these three users. So I need to do some modifications. I have defined these three users with a variable that is nothing but pets. So this variable, this name I'll replace with the variable that is $pets. Okay, I'll save this. Now I'll execute it. Let me check if anything is there in the result. Okay, I'll clear it. So now I'll execute this with one request, three different users. So we'll see in the result it will be executed for three. Why not executed? Users are saved or not? Okay. PET. Correct. This is not executing. Why? HTTP dollar pads. Mm, okay, sorry. Here I had to increase the count. Three user. It has been executing for one user. Okay, now we can see. I'll clear it. Previous result was there. Okay, so three times it has been executed. One for the, we can see the request here. One for the bird. First request is for bird. The second request is for dogs, and the third request is for the cats. So in this way, we can define the preprocessor. Then the next thing what we need to do is how to define the timer. For example, these three requests are executing one after another immediately. So if there are multiple requests and we want to give some hold in between each execution, so in that case we'll define the timer. So in JMeter we have multiple uh, predefined timers. I'll go with a constant timer. So what will happen? The constant timer we can use, but if I start explaining all this timer, it will take one day. All these components, everything. So it will take all. We need to play with our based on our requirements. What are the most commonly used? I'm just going with that. Sorry, it is been defined twice. Remove one. Yes. Okay, constant timer. I'll give it duration of 3000 millisecond, which is not. So in 3 seconds it will execute. So we have three requests, one iterations. So now I'll request everyone to look here. Okay, once I start execution, you look here. Within first second, within 3 seconds, will not get any result. Once it reaches three, on fourth second, we'll get the result. I request everyone to look there. Okay, I'll go to the result tab now. I'll start execution. See, on fourth request, all three got executed after fourth request. Similarly, if there are multiple requests and for each request we are giving a duration of 3 seconds or 10 seconds, once the first request executed, then after 10 seconds the second request will execute. So for that case, for request level we need to pass the timer. I'll enable once. Now I'll disable this. I'll enable this one. I'll replace this with dogs. I'll enable this one to show this. This is for dogs. This is let it be for BIRD as birds. Okay. So this constant timer is defined globally, thread level. Now inside this I'll add one more timer. Let it be for 2 millisecond, and the second one is for another timer. Let it start from 3 milliseconds. I'll save this. So it means for fast 5 second inside this 2 and globally it is 3. For fast 5 second this will not execute, and after execution of this after 3 seconds means on 8th second this request will execute. second request will execute. Now I'll change the name of this request. This is request 1. This is request 2 for better understanding. I'll change the request name. I've given the yes. Then I'll change the user count, which is 2. So now I'll run this now. This one also I'll change constant timer 1. This is constant timer 2. Okay. I'll clear the result. Let's clear it now. You check this result now. Till 5 seconds nothing will come. In 6th second it comes. Okay, this one also executed after 6th second. Okay, likewise we'll need to give the timer for each request iterations. So now the last part is the assertions. Listeners, I already explained these where we are seeing the results. These are nothing but the listeners only. Similarly, we have multiple listeners, graphical representation of these requests, aggregator report, so 1, 2, 3. Listeners. There is some graph report. Okay. Now I'll disable this request. Only one request to play. We'll clear the results. The results have been cleared from all the places. Now I'll execute the report. The aggregator report will come after 5 seconds. Then the graphical report. Similarly, we can have the tree report and we can have the after 5th second one request will be executed. Similar concept in the graphical report, similar in tree report and in the tabular report. Okay. Now we'll explain the some of the commonly used assertions. Similarly, in the thread, we need to add the assertions. Okay, first I'll go with the response assertions. So in the response assertions, we have multiple combinations. We can play based on the requirement, or if we have any free time, we can explore all these options. The most commonly used in any API request or any when we are doing any API testing, the most common thing we need to check first is the response code. So as because it is a GET request, so the expected response code should be the 200. So I'll go with the response assertions and the response code I need to validate. For that, how I can validate? Let me disable all these things. We'll go with these two results. Okay. So in the response assertions, I'll validate as it is a GET request. So I'm expecting the response code should be 200. So I have selected the response code options radio button. Then I can add in downside we have the add option. I can add and I'm expecting the response code should be 200. I'll save it. Now I'll run the request. I'll remove the timer now. I'll disable it. I'll remove it. Yes. Okay, now I have only one timer that is at the global level. So after 3 seconds, the execution will happen. And I am expecting 200 status code. Once it will match, the result will be in green. Okay. Okay. It is executing. 5th second, it will show. 3rd second, it will show that the response code is it is green as it is matching with the expected. Now intentionally I'll change to make it fail. I'll give the response code as 205, which I know it is wrong. I'll run it and I'm expecting it should false. It should fail. Okay. Likewise, we can check the wow why it is failing and if it is failing. In assertion, we have one thing that is that if we add, then we can get the details log of the assertions. That is thing I'm forgetting. Something assertion log. Something is there. Okay, we'll leave it. Then we'll go for the duration assertions. uh, Sorry, in the similarly like response code, all the API request might be having some response message like okay status code, okay and success, some of the response header. Like we are passing the response code here with for this request. I don't know what is the response message and the response header, otherwise I could have shown you. So best when we are running any API request in the postman, we must be getting downside what is with the status code and the status line, what is the response header. So those things we can add and we can validate. In this way we can validate the response assertion. And there is something called duration assertions, which means I know this request will execute for 2 seconds. So if we are giving 2 second duration, then it must pass. If I'm giving the duration is 1 second or 1.5 second, then the execution must fail. So before execution, let me check what is the duration of this assertion. It is 704. So if I'll give 600, then it will fail. Before that, let me disable response assertion. Or else let it be enabled. I'll give 200. It will pass, this assertion will pass, and I'll give 600. I know it will fail. Second assertion, it will fail. Result tree. I will clear all the result. Now if we'll see, it will fail. And what is the failure reason? Duration assertion. So it is expecting this much of time, but I have given 600. So if I'll increase the time duration to 1500, then it must pass. So let me increase this to 1600. Hope it should pass. Okay. Okay. Now it has been passed. Similar way, we have the JSON validation. JSON assertion. Then we have the what all size assertions. Size assertions means the size of this response is something called this much bytes. But if we'll validate with 3000, then it will fail. So here we have the comparison. If the size in bytes is 4000, which is greater than, so the expected, the actual is something close to 4292, and I am giving 4000. I am giving greater than 4000, so hope it should pass. Okay, it is passed. There is no issue with the size. The body size bytes is in within this, so I have given greater than this, so it is okay. And if I'll keep this less or equal to, then it may fail because it is not exactly equal to that. Result tree. Okay, it is failing, and the reason of failure is 3. The size is this, but I have given the size should equal to 4000. So in this way, we can play with different kinds of assertions, whether they are already predefined based on our requirement. We can use all these predefined elements of JMeter. So majorly used points I have done. If anyone have any query, I know in one shot no one will understand. It may take time. If anyone have any query, if I could explain, you can ask or else we can wind up. Yeah, I'm done. Nish from my end.
Thank you,
Where
Flo.
I where
Flo.
I have covered the elements
Yeah.
overall, the assertion basic mostly use assertions,
Yeah.
and the script is nothing but this only part.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for explaining so clearly.